Good evening. Welcome to Celtic Down Under, WA Labour Day edition. So we out here in Western Australia had a day off work today, which meant we could enjoy the Celtic game last night at a 8 p.m. kickoff, and now we've had a couple of beverages and a day to recover. Although I guess for most people with kids like myself, it was more a day of unpaid childcare where the schools get the day off rather than we do. Paul, how's your Labour Day been? How was your night last night?
Yeah, pretty good. It was, I think I mentioned it last week, my Bucks do was on Saturday. So, and then we did a bit of a kind of hair of the dog at Blaster's 5th birthday party in Borswood on Sunday. So today has been very low key and generally just a bit of a recovery sessions. But yeah, managed to catch all of the game and wasn't too intoxicated for it. So hopefully can remember everything we need to chat about tonight.
Yep, Tommy, how's your day been?
Yeah, it's been good. Pretty quiet. Didn't really have a big one this weekend. I was had too big a weekend last weekend, so that was enough for me. So I actually watched the game. Didn't get down to the CSC last night. Just watched it here at home. Didn't have any beers and good to get a win. And today was just pretty relaxing. My kids are up and about. They're young adults, so not the same as yourself, Sean, chasing them around. But yeah, just got to the sauna today and bit of dinner, and here I am.
What strip is that you're wearing? Is that the dark green one?
This is the League Cup final one from last year.
When we beat Hibs 2-1. The one with the big Clover badge, is that the one?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Ah, yeah, cool. So we're both wearing examples of strips that Celtic would have been allowed to wear yesterday.
Yeah.
And with St Mirren still playing in a home strip. But just in case anyone from Adidas is watching, because I believe in Postecoglou's pre-match comments, he was none too happy about wearing the grey strip either. But Hoodoo is over. The grey strip has come through for us. Obviously, the problem in the previous game where we lost was the players couldn't see each other. And luckily, it also meant Charles Dunn could not see Kyogo sneaking in behind him when he got that red card. So let's wear that grey strip more often, I think. So the first thing to note, I guess, of the game, something that is quite exceptional for any game in modern day football, is that the Celtic team was announced with the same starting 11 as the cup final, but also the exact same bench as the cup final. And even more astonishingly, the same 5 subs that were made last week were the same 5 subs that were made yesterday. Were you expecting any changes, Tommy, or was that the right decision you felt beforehand rather than with hindsight?
Look, I'm not surprised that he kept the same team. I probably was expecting maybe 1 or 2 changes, maybe Ibarra to come in on the wing. But not surprised at all. I mean, last season when we got to this sort of point of the season, if I recall correctly, he sort of got pretty consistent with his team and week to week. It wouldn't be too many changes, and yeah, I wasn't overly surprised.
Mm-hmm. We've been on this really good winning run at the moment, and a lot of the games, particularly the home games, really have a kind of sameness about them, and the way they feel, the way we talk about the games. But I feel like yesterday was a bit different, to be honest. There was obviously our past performances against St Mirren. That's Postecoglou's 3rd game at New St Mirren Park, and that's the first time we've actually scored a goal. We previously had a 0-0 and a 2-0 defeat there. Paul, how did you see the game overall? Not just without going into the minutiae of the players, but the overall performance, how things played out.
Yeah, look, I think we joked about this as a cliche, but it really was a game of 2 halves. We never really turned up first half. I'm sure we'll get into the penalty decisions shortly, but obviously they get a good break with a penalty call early on. It doesn't really change how they go about the game. They were happy to frustrate and use Main and Grieve as their out balls and try and get up and support as and when, if they could, but really they're looking for set pieces and to try and take something there. I think the biggest difference between the first and second half for me is that we looked pedestrian first half. We huffed and puffed, and apart from a couple of nice bits of interplay, we didn't really create very much, and we never broke the lines the way we typically would. Whereas second half, there was a much greater intensity. We moved the ball quicker. We moved the ball vertically through the lines. And yeah, obviously chances came from there. And yeah, we were pretty comfortable in the end.
I mean, it wasn't like we were. Yes, so Mirren did what they were expected to do in the first half. Stephen Robinson came out after and said that their tactic was to press us for the ball at the right moments and at the right times. And I think what he really meant by that was the right players. And they seemed to accept that they weren't going to get it from Callum McGregor. And what they were actually looking at was pressing Adam Moy and the fullbacks and kind of try to get at them. Didn't really, I mean, I want to say it didn't work for them, but they did obviously get that 1-goal lead, which was the only shot that they had on or off target in the entire game was from the penalty spot. So we had 82% of the possession by the end. We had 706 passes by the end. They had, I forgot to write it down here. Hold on. 86 completed passes in the entire game. So it was pretty one-sided in that sense. Tommy, do you think that was a result of the red card? Do you think it was a result of the early goal? Or do you think it was just a result of the way Celtic played? Or all of those things, and at which level, which order of importance, if that case?
Well, I think the St Mirren were always going to set the stall out like that. I think the last couple of times they've played us, they've set out 5 at the back and tried to make it difficult for us. I thought we started the game, even before the penalty, quite poor. We gave the ball away, a couple of slack passes, and just weren't holding on to the ball at all. They were pressing Moy and Hatari when they had the back to goal, so we weren't able to get turned and play the passes in behind like they normally would. So I actually thought that Johnson done not too bad in the first half, trying to get a couple of balls in behind for Jota. And that was probably the only times we sort of looked dangerous down that right-hand side. The red card, yeah, definitely changed the game. But I thought that the first goal for us, getting equalisers at the start of the second half, was probably the most important thing. Just not only for getting it back to 1-1, but from a psychological perspective, given we're wearing the grey strip and given we struggled there the last couple of times, I think that sort of really gave us the boost. And I think from there, it was only going to be one winner, and we really ran over the top of them. And then once we got the second goal, then they really had to open up, and then the gaps became bigger. And Abada obviously coming on, more direct, bit more trickery than Maeda. All contributed. Really good second half.
Yeah, my personal feeling on it was that the red card didn't actually have any material impact on the way the game was being played until we go 2-1 up, and then they have to open up a bit at that point. I think before that, the only difference really was that they had one target man instead of 2, and other than that, there was really no effective change to how the game was going. Mahesh has suggested in the comments that in the first half stats showed that we did have a good XG. We should have scored a goal or 2 in the first half. Rio Hatate hits the crossbar. Jota pulls off a great save from Carson. For me, my main complaint in the first half was because we were getting fewer openings than we're used to. There was some bad decision making. There was a kind of panic when we were getting the openings, and that was particularly against people like Jota and Alistair Johnson and Adam Moy out on the right, who were just kind of swinging it to the back post, and it was Dyson Maeda versus Ryan Strain, and it was never successful. One of the stats from the game was that we had 36 attempted crosses, and only one of those was successful. Was that a very good successful cross that was a key change in the game, Paul? The one successful one? How did you see it? How was your reaction to that one successful cross?
Our one successful cross, you mean? The free kick. Well, look, it's as soon as we get the first goal, we know you know what's coming. You know it's going to be relentless. But yeah, the delivery from Moy is great. Obviously, AJ is just sheer determination to get in there. I'm still not 100%. I think I said this on the chat. I'm not 100% sure what part of his body it came off, or I saw he tweeted that I'm definitely claiming it. So I think he maybe bundled it in against the defender and it sort of squirted its way in through there. I'm not sure which part of his body it eventually touched last, but it kind of didn't really matter. I was half expecting VAR to try and find a a flick off an arm or something to rule it out, but maybe I was even more cynical than usual. But it's a great delivery by Moy, and he's the first one to really react, to realize it's going in because of the angle that he's at and where the contact's coming from. But yeah, speaking about Moy in general, he obviously had a pretty average first half, as did most of the team, to be honest. And then he starts the second half like a train and has 3 assists. Although, if we're technically their assists, but maybe the Abada assist is, we're taking a bit of a disservice off Abada because he pretty much does that for himself. But it was a great delivery, really good determination to get in, and just the sheer will to want to win that ball first is what made the difference. And obviously, once it was 2-1, there was only one team winning from there.
Yeah, and even. Yeah, there's probably still a few more things we can touch on in the first half as well. So the St Mirren's. So Callum McGregor, I think, highlighted it to referee at one point that every single time St Mirren committed a foul, they were just blatantly kicking the ball the length of the pitch or picking it up and running away with it. And it wasn't even subtle in any way. So I don't know if that's St Mirren have scouted out the referee before and went, oh yeah, he doesn't give this. And then at one point you see Callum McGregor having a word with the referee, and then the next time they get a verbal, and then the next time after that they get a yellow. But by the time that's happened, they've already done it 7 times. So it's a bit frustrating in that sense that the referees can't, enforce the rules. We're also not getting the ball people recycling the ball as much as we would like in a home game. So I think it's maybe a bit extreme to say we were poor in the first half. I don't think we were poor. I think we were actually doing well enough in the circumstances we were up against. And St Mirren were doing what they set out to do quite effectively. You can call it gamesmanship and anti-football, whatever you wish. But then, after that, we do get the moments that some people reckon, and certainly most paid pundits reckon, turned the game. And that's where Charles Dunn has a shocking back pass. Kyogo gets in behind him. Gets hauled down by Dunn. We get awarded a penalty and a red card, and then there's some refereeing chicanery where Andrew Dallas just lets David Dickinson know, no, that's a free kick. And there's no actual monitor review. It's just a call from the VAR bus or whatever it is that's going on. Tommy, how were you reacting to that incident with Kyogo, with the red card, with the penalty?
Well, as soon as I saw it, I thought VAR's going to have a look at whether it was inside or outside the box, because it did look pretty marginal, looked pretty tight to me just on first glance. So I knew they would have a look at it. For me, it's very close, but there's been a couple of stills I've seen where there's still contact when Kyogo's actually in the box. He's got his foot on the line, part of his body's in the box. And as far as I'm aware, that means it should be a penalty. The thing that I don't understand is VAR is supposed to be for clear and obvious errors, as far as I'm aware, and none of these, potentially the Taylor one, that's a different argument, but the Kyogo one in particular, to me, wasn't a clear and obvious error. And why the referee hasn't been asked to go over and have a look at the monitor himself, I don't understand why that's the case. Maybe I'm missing something, but for me, I thought it was a penalty. And a red card was the right decision, but I wasn't surprised at all when it got changed.
I think in terms of why, and again, I'm just going from my understanding and not saying this is a fact, but my understanding is that for things like offside, ball being in and out of play, penalty being in and out of the box, those things are just called from the booth, but should that be the case? Because it kind of looked a lot to me like it was a subjective decision from Andrew Dallas. There was no, and as you said, Tommy, exactly, was it or was it not clear and obvious? It did not seem clear and obvious to me. Paul, did you think it was a clear and obvious overturn that Andrew Dallas, son of Hugh Dallas, totally impartial official, should be making?
No, I absolutely. Well, actually, I thought it was a bold call that the ref gave it both decisions as I think they were. He made the call on the pitch. To Tommy's point, yeah, we want clear and obvious stuff challenged. I don't think there's a clear and obvious error there. yeah, it definitely inside, definitely outside, unless there's a view that we haven't seen where there's an absolute still and he's got a line that shows there's a zero of him in the box, then when there's still contact, then yeah, it's 100% a penalty because the contact continues into the box. And as we saw at the game between Thistle at Ibrox the other week, there was a lot of complaint on our side that, this foul started way outside the box and, sort of fell in. But it became clear to those of us that then had to do some research, including myself, and that was the actual rule. And I wasn't aware that was the rule, but I think we all quickly became up to speed that was definitely the rule, that if the contact continued inside the area, then it would be a penalty. And so, I think the referee got it spot on the pitch. And then, for reasons that only Andrew Dallas knows, he got himself involved in a situation where he's effectively re-refereeing the game at that point. And we don't want VAR re-refereeing the game. We wanted picking up clear mistakes, and we wanted to be adding advantage to the referee on the pitch and help. Effectively, he's there to help out. And we also want consistency. We always talk about consistency. So, the Thistle one happens at Ibrox. You want the same decision to happen the next time that's the case. And that doesn't look like it's the case here. So, a few things there just around VAR. We'll continue to talk about VAR, ad infinitum, because we're going to, it's here to stay. But I'm quite happy with VAR in the game. We just need to be using it better. Like it just every week we're talking about it, if not in our game and in one of the other matches, and just in terms of how it's been applied. So it's not VAR's not the issue. It's the bloke in the studio making the decision that's the issue. So they definitely got this one wrong. But I was actually impressed that the referee on the pitch made those both decisions quickly, clearly, and that should have probably been left to stand.
Well, we'll talk about the second one in just a moment, but I just like to recall Andrew Dallas VAR was the same official who gave four penalties for the home team at Ibrox against St Mirren, not in the very recent past, one or two of which were also on the edge of the box. So when we're talking about away strips, I think we should be getting an away strip that's blue for next season. And then we'll find that things like that one on Kyogo yesterday would have remained a penalty and not been overturned. And the Greg Taylor handball incident would have probably not been given if we managed to get a blue away strip for next season. I think that's kind of the way it seems to work this year. Tommy, did you think the Greg Taylor handball was a handball? Did you think that? Do you think that something needs to be tweaked so that we don't get to a situation where we could be scoring a goal 3 minutes later and then having it chopped off and coming back for a penalty? What did you think of that as well?
Well, as soon as it happened in the box, and it looked like it had hit his hand, but his hand was already out of the side, so he's not actually moved his hand towards the ball. So I thought, well, VAR is going to have a look at it. And then when it took so long, I thought, I was surprised. I thought they're not going to have a look at this one. And then 3 minutes later, I'm not sure whether there is a time limit on how long they can take. Because as you say, what if Celtic went up the other end and put the ball in the back of the net? What happens there? What's the rule? But for me, in terms of the actual penalty, we've seen them given against Celtic several times this year. You got Burnaby against Dundee United, Matt O'Reilly against Ross County, and then we've seen the other way where you've got the Hearts Michael Smith one when we beat them 4-3 at Tynecastle. Pretty much he's put his hand out towards the ball, worse than what Greg Taylor done, and it's no penalty, no VAR check. And then you see what's happened on the other side of the city in games involving them, and it's just hard to get a read. What is the rule? I mean, they need to come out and say how they're interpreting it and just interpret it consistently, because it doesn't make any sense to the average punter, I think, at the moment, and the way it's being officiated week to week and game to game.
Yeah, and to be fair, this has always been the case in Scottish football. In some of the comments will reflect that we've never felt that refereeing was unbiased. I think someone, hold on, just I find it here. Yep, Michael McDonald, foreign refs is the answer. probably. They never been a talk of strike ever since we had that weekend with the Luxembourg Liechtenstein officials who did a good job, and the Scottish referee shut up after that. I do agree with Mahesh, though, that it was the right call. Well, in the sense that the rule was correctly applied, not in the sense that it was a offence. But if we're being consistent with how the rule is applied, it was technically correct. His arm was out from his body, and he motion it towards the ball as well for a kind of second action. But I think what we can do is we can probably put some officiating chat to bed and talk about Celtic, because that was a big game, a big win. Just to give a little bit of context, before the game, St Mirren had only conceded 9 goals at home in the league this season, and we scored 5. So that's like a large percentage of the goals that they've conceded at home this year was yesterday against us. Before the game, they had the 3rd best defensive record in the league. St Johnstone, only team this season that scored more than 1 goal at New St Mirren Park, and they'd scored 2. So these are all things that like kind of reflect on this was a big performance. This was a big result. It was kind of, to me, it reminded me of the time where we beat Livingston 3-0 or 3-1. I can't remember the exact score, where James Forrest scores the 3rd one. And it was a kind of really getting this hoodoo off our back. There was like, and again, I know Postecoglou wouldn't be chatting about it, wouldn't entertain any talk of that. But to me, it felt like there was a minor hoodoo going into this game. I don't know if it was from previous results. I don't know if it was from the grey strip. I don't know if it was expecting a cup final hangover. Paul, did you feel that as well, or is it just me?
Look, all the stats, 4 league cup finals, we haven't won a game past that. I hate when fans fixate on an unlucky strip, or I know why it happens, but to me you're making excuses before the fact, sort of thing, in the attempt that potentially the game might not go our way. Look, I didn't really have any concerns going into the match. We're flying for form. We've beaten St Mirren twice recently. We knew how they're going to set up. You're expecting the lightning doesn't strike twice. They've always had a great result against us at home earlier in the season. The team and Ange are going to be bang up for it. They're in much better form, and we've got a much deeper squad than when we last went there. And even with a bit of, a couple of unfortunate decisions first half and going in 1 down at halftime, never really was too concerned that, it wasn't going to turn around for us. I think the first goal 56 minutes, second goal 62 minutes, and then suddenly the game's completely turned around and you're on your way. And it's about that time, like 60 minutes, 75 minutes. If we haven't already got the upper hand in games, that's when it starts to happen, because that's when the bench unloads. That's when, you get fresh legs in against. And even if the opposition brings on fresh legs, they're not at the same level. They're going to weaken their side by bringing their subs on, and we're not really weakening our side by bringing our subs on. So, no, I felt like it could be tricky again for 50, 60, 70 minutes, but ultimately there would be too much firepower. And that's how it panned out again.
Yeah, and look, I think the game, as you said, it changes after 60 minutes, in the sense that we have the deeper squad. And even in previous games against St Mirren, where they've not had the red cards, I guess they did in the last game, but in games where they've kept 11 men on, it has shown like the quality and fitness has told after 70 minutes. And it may well have turned out to be the case again yesterday. But I think for us to get the 2-1 lead was not really down to that. And it was not really down to inventiveness either. It was the 2 goals that we scored to take the lead were almost just sheer will and determination. And Jota, in his post-match, they ask him, he says, I need to see my goal back because I'm not even sure how I scored it. He's basically like, the ball's there and he's just got this instinct and determination, just swings a leg at it, gets it in the goal. And then like his celebration was beautiful. Like there was none of this nonsense theatrics. It was just absolute sheer joy and like determination and willpower in his face. Tommy, do you think that the Jota goal really encapsulated the turnaround, or Was it, or do you think, am I wrong there? What do you think?
No, definitely. I think scoring early in the second half, as I think I touched on earlier, really made the difference and just stamped the sort of belief that we would have to get back in the game. Not that we don't have any belief at the moment the way that we've been playing, but as you said, possibility we lost the last time. We drew nothing each the time before that. Just to get that first goal and set us on our way was a huge thing. And fair play to Jota as well, because he wasn't having a good game. He was getting fouled quite consistently. And he was getting booed for it. And I don't know if you heard the St Mirren. There was one St Mirren fan. I don't know if he was a St Mirren fan actually in the crowd, but the abuse and the language he was giving out during the commentary was quite something. But for Jota, he kept on going through that. He didn't let it get his head down. He was still trying. And he was even one point he ran from one side of the park to the other at the start of the second half, just before he scored, just to try and make something happen. And as you say, just sheer will and determination. I mean, how he scored that, lying on his arse, was something else. And his celebration was fantastic, and it just shows the real spirit in the team, I think.
Yeah, and look, even before he scores that, there's a moment like 3 minutes before that where somebody plays a ball across him, and it's not a fast ball, but it wasn't a hard one, and he just kind of gets his foot under it and it just goes straight out of play. So even the whole team really till that goal wasn't having a great start to the second half, and then he just that just kind of, I don't know, that goal that just lifted everyone at that point. Yeah. And then Alistair Johnson back post, just two goals that were just forced in, nothing beautiful about it, just two absolute determined goals. And I think at that point the game changes. St Mirren go 4-3-2 immediately, and we just start to pick them off. We have one that's cleared off the line. The goalkeeper gets a hand to it, and if he doesn't, Kyogo's probably going to score it. And what do you think of this in terms of Jota's overall performance in the last few weeks? Paul, do you think that's going to be? Is that kind of? Do you think he'll raise it after that yesterday? Do you think he needed that goal for a bit of belief in the same way Matt O'Reilly looked like he did when he scored a couple of weeks ago against St Mirren? Do you think this could be a late renaissance in the season for Jota now on the back of that?
Well, yeah, look, I thought he'd been playing pretty well. I think I was on record as saying a couple of weeks ago that I can't remember who we were playing, the home match, where he was like, his work rate was phenomenal. He didn't necessarily have the output as he maybe often would have, but I think his contribution's been decent. The cup final, I thought he was solid and played well without maybe, he had a couple of nice touches, obviously the nutmeg, and he did look dangerous, obviously coming in off the wing. He had the shot and the save, and there was bits of that. But the goal will definitely perk him up. He was having a frustrating afternoon. Like, you can clearly see, interestingly, he scores from the inside right channel. However, he looked way more comfortable when he was back on the left. And that, we obviously know that's his natural position. Obviously, Maeda's been playing so well with it. He's been sort of forced across to the right. That said, again, first half, the most times we did look most dangerous was the link up between him and Hatate and AJ down the right. There was a lovely little interchange that put Jota in for the shot that Carson saved well, as you mentioned earlier. That little pass in from Johnston in, and the little back heel by Hatate, and then put Jota away. So, look, I think he will get a boost from that. Obviously, attacking players when they're scoring goals, it does give them a lift. But I generally think his contribution has been pretty good. It's maybe just not been at the absolute highest level that we've seen him produce. So, there's a perception that he's not maybe, being as impactful or playing up to the level that we know he can reach. But I think his level has been pretty decent.
There's another winger we can talk about, though, for the second time this season. Maeda gets hooked at half-time in Paisley. That happened earlier when we lost 2-0. And then Abada comes on. And again, I think Abada's first two contributions is he puts crosses either into the stand or into the goalkeeper's hands. But then he scores the crucial third goal where everyone kind of starts to breathe a sigh of release at that point, and the commentators say, "Yep, this is it, game over now." And there was a spell just after that where it looked like we were just going to be choosing how many goals we score. There's a comment here. Jota on the left, Abada on the right for the Hearts game from Mark Dunn. What do you think, Tommy? Should Abada have started, or do you think it was the right decision that we were still going with Maeda, even though he didn't have his best game offensively last week, and he didn't have his best game the last time we were in St Mirren? Or is hindsight 50-50? And should Abada be starting the next game? Tommy?
Yeah, look, I think Abada's done enough to merit a start. I think that's 2 goals in the last few games where he's come off the bench. So, and for me, yesterday he really gave us something different when he came on, and he allowed Jota to get back on, and I agree with Paul, on the left-hand side, which is his best position. Maeda, for me, he deserved his place in the team. He's been playing superbly well. And yeah, he wasn't that effective last week going forward, but the amount of work he'd done defensively was just incredible. But having said that, a game against St Mirren away, when they've got 5 at the back, they're probably going to sit pretty deep. It's probably not, and they're not going to press forward as much. He's not going to be required as much defensively. It's probably a time you could maybe have given him a rest. So for me, I can understand why he started. I would have probably went with Abada to start. But Abada in the second half, I thought was tremendous. And I thought actually seen a little bit more from him than I have previously. I mean, previously he seems to sort of struggle to beat a man and have a trick to get past the man. He's been a bit similar to Maeda in terms of his pace, but he seems to be picking up a trick or two now, like even for his goal, just that little, the way he moves the ball from one foot to the other, steps past and finishes it. You can see a touch of the Harry Kewells and that, and I just wonder if Harry Kewell's having a bit of an impact on him, because he did look really good yesterday, and definitely I would say merits to start on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. And it was a really good low finish. I don't think there's much the keeper can do about it, to be honest. But there's another player we could talk about that may merit a start, and look, I'm going to chuck my name in here for this one, because I think that Abada, as much as he's a great player, when he gets stood up on the wing, he kind of looks like he lacks a bit of imagination. And he kind of, when he plays on instinct, he does better. But when he's having to stop and think, I'm not sure he's as effective. But one player that I think is the opposite of that plays some very inventive football, very tricky, always moving his feet, always moving the ball, seeing runs, seeing angles, and who's looked very effective in the last couple of games for me is Haksabanovic. Paul, what's your take on our Montenegrin winger? Does he deserve a start? How's he been in your eyes? How was he yesterday?
Yeah, look, I take the point. He offers something different, I think, to pretty much everyone. Obviously, he's got that quick feet, but he's probably less. The only one that comes close is probably Jota, and Jota's more like a traditional dribbling winger, which will go past people at pace. Whereas, to me, Haksabanovic is more. He's not going to try and run at you and necessarily beat you inside or outside. He's going to little quick shifts of feet. He's looking for little 1-2s, maybe a turn and a flick off and back. I don't know if you want, like, I'd have no complaints with him starting, but in the levels of competition we've got in those areas, does he warrant a start, right? So, and if you think Abada does, are you switching both wingers in the same match? Maybe not. I'd feel like when we've made some more significant wholesale changes, like more than 2 or 3 at any one time in the past, then you potentially get a slightly more disjointed performance, and it doesn't necessarily go as well as you would hope. So look, I'd have no issues starting Abada and Haksabanovic, but I don't think it'll happen. Like I think one of them might get a start, and the other, and probably Jota plays as well as whether that's on the left or the right. If Haksabanovic gets annoyed, he probably stays on the right. If Abada gets annoyed, he's probably staying on the left. At the end of the day, Hearts are still, we'd expect to beat them at home, but they're still the third team in the country for now. So you probably don't want to do too many wholesale changes. We spoke about earlier on, and Tommy made a good point that obviously once we're into this time in the season where this is where the nitty gritty happens. We've only got one game a week, apart from obviously this week. Typically, we've only got one game a week, so there aren't going to be as many changes. I think Haksabanovic could easily start, but I'm not sure he's pushed his case as strong as Abada has, particularly with the assist in the goal just there.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite
Hearts will probably come out a bit, right? So they will. They're not just going to sit back for the whole match, whereas other teams that come and visit might do that. So you'd think that they will have at points in the game they'll have a bit of a go, and Abada's pace and directness, I think, is advantageous.
Hearts have got previous for resting players ahead of cup games, even at Celtic Park. I think they did it 2 years ago, where they basically changed the majority of the starting 11. And what we're talking about here is quite divisive in the comments. We've got one commenter whose name I can't say, give Hacksaw a wee run for expletive reasons. And then we've got Stoned Outlaw saying, nobody listened to Sean. He doesn't want Hacksaw playing. But then, Mahesh, Hacksaw plays like a playmaker, even though he's on the wing. And again, comment, Maeda is much more suited for bigger pitches. Abada is technically can be a man with the ball. So we've got this great position where we've got these 4 competing wingers and a 5th winger who has not even been mentioned, and barely a breath has been spoken about him in the last 2 weeks. He was in every match day squad until the cup final. That was the first match day squad he was left out of all season. And our 5th winger, the most decorated player in our squad, in our team, James Forrest. What's going on? Should he be in the squads? Is this just the evolution of the team? What's going on with James Forrest? I know we're more focused on match analysis, but where's the 5th winger? Should we care? Is it just what's going on? Tommy, do you miss James Forrest?
Oh, look, I love James Forrest, and I think he's been a seriously underappreciated player by a lot of Celtic fans over the years. I mean, he's 100 goals and 100 assists. I mean, not many.
And then a couple more, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not many that have, and he doesn't even have his own song. So, look, it's one of those things. It's the squad is that strong now. It's like, who do you leave off the bench? Because obviously you're naming a bench to fill a need. You're trying to plan for contingencies, what you might need to do to change things during the game. And if you've already got Abada, Haksabanovic on the bench, do you really need 3 wingers on the bench? And at the moment, I think just where he is in his career, I would say that, probably Haksabanovic and Abada, unfortunately, are ahead of him at this stage.
Mm-hmm. So you reckon it's just form, even though he was in every squad until last week?
I think it is. And just, as I said, just the balance of the squad and just trying to make sure you have, the right options available to make changes during the game, depending on what way the game might be going.
I wonder.
You've seen even Turnbull's not getting much of a run now. Sorry. Turnbull's not getting much of a run now. Iwata seems to have overtaken him, and it's just maybe just part of the natural squad progression, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder how much he's been paid to be the 19th or 20th man in the squad. That's my only real concern there. But as someone, I'm definitely happy to have around, just as long as we're getting value there. Tommy, you just mentioned Iwata. Is there a case to bring him in and give Callum McGregor some more freedom, Paul?
Look, I'd be pretty keen to see that, to be honest. In the snippets that we've seen of Iwata, he's looked very neat and tidy. It's like, I think his addition in the cup final was really crucial in terms of just solidifying that when we had that wobbly spell. He's obviously a J-League Player of the Year last season. I think it'd be good to see more of him, whether that's Wednesday night or not. But that again, that's the other element you've got with adding Iwata to the squad, is then that Cal doesn't get dropped, does he? So it's even more competition for the further forward positions in midfield. So O'Reilly's had a bit of time out. Previously, Moy was. Hatate mostly will play, but he didn't have his best game yet. So you push Iwata into the deep line role, and then you've suddenly got even more competition for places. Which for somebody like Turnbull, that makes it even harder for him to get in a squad. And while we're on about Forrest, I think the only additional thing I would say about Forrest, and he has been a tremendous servant, and he still looked sharp and contributed when he's come on in the rare times he has this season. But I think Abada and Haksabanovic, not only are they further ahead than him in terms of what they can contribute, but they're a bit more versatile as well. So as one of the comments said, Haksabanovic can play like a playmaker. He can come into a slightly deeper role. He can play the 10. And somebody like Abada, I could see Abada ending up as some sort of centre forward. He's got that ability to finish, find space in the box. And he's obviously filled in there once or twice when Kyogo had his injuries last year before Giakoumakis was fully up and running. So I just think those two offer more versatility as well as anything else. So it's just another unfortunate reason for James Forrest that he probably does just miss out.
And in terms of other players who are outstanding squad players that could maybe be determined unlucky, if you will, or just victims of other players' success. What did you make of Matt Riley's goal and overall performance yesterday, Tommy?
I thought that's the sharpest and the best he's looked in probably a number of weeks since he's been coming on. I don't know whether he's maybe been carrying a little knock or something, but he's just looked a bit sluggish, I thought, the times he has come on in recent weeks. But yesterday he looked really hungry, he looked keen to get on the ball. A lovely finish for his goal. He was looking to make things happen. It looked more like getting back to what we know he can do. Because I think that's been missing for probably a number of weeks now since we came back. But yeah, he looked really good. I mean, we saw what he done last year. I mean, he can be a really valuable contributor. But again, it comes back to the competition in that area of the pitch. Like, who are you going to drop? And who is going to come out to make way for him? Do you drop Moy? Do you drop Hatari? If you're going to play Iwata, do you drop? I mean, it's just it's a really good problem for Ange to have. But as I said, I think at the moment we're getting to that really sort of serious point of the season where I don't think you'll see too many changes week to week. So I think it's going to be hard for the guys that are on the bench to force their way in, because it's difficult if you're only getting 20 minutes a week to get a bit of a rhythm up. And when you play football, and when it's played football, we'll know it if you're coming off the bench and you're only getting 10, 15 minutes, it's hard to get a bit of consistency in form. So I think it's going to be difficult for the guys on the bench, but it's good to have the options there.
I think with Adam Moy's age, he's probably a prime, and with the Tynecastle game looming, I think he's a prime candidate to be rotated on Wednesday. So the way I see it is there's two real options to rotate Moy in that case. Is you can either bring O'Reilly in 1-for-1, or you can bring Iwata in and allow McGregor some freedom to go forward. Now, that might mean taking a bit of energy out of McGregor, etc. Hatate, similar maybe. Just quick, short answer from both of you. Which, if that's your two choices, which do you go for? Do you go straight with O'Reilly, or do you go bring in Iwata and put McGregor in for Moy? Tommy?
O'Reilly.
Paul?
Same.
No doubt.
Same.
Yeah.
O'Reilly, yeah, fair. Yeah, I think it's probably, I think especially being a home game, we might need that a bit more. And I think one thing that's really understated and underappreciated about Matt O'Reilly is he's brilliant at defending set pieces aerially. I think it's so under noticed how much he does that. He did it a couple of times yesterday, and he does it like that one, the goal we conceded in the cup final, that's not conceded if Matt O'Reilly is in ahead of Moy. So it's one aspect of his game that is very underappreciated, I think. In terms of the last player I really want to talk about, actually maybe two, but one player to focus on again from yesterday. And at half-time, I was given the shout that, I guess we can put these two together, was we should be, with the red card, we should be taking off Starfelt and bringing on O and going for two up front. So O really put a shift in yesterday, put himself about, got a penalty, probably could have had two penalties. I think there was one that was appalling that it wasn't gone to VAR, and if he'd been wearing blue, it probably would have been a penalty. And if the game finishes one each, it's a massive talking point. But anyway, we get another one later with the shirt pull. He gets his goal. Paul, do you think O is going to be starting midweek? Do you think he's going to be on penalties going forward? How do you think he's settled in so far? How would you put his performance yesterday?
Yeah, so I think his performance yesterday was solid again. I think he's contributed every single time he's come off the bench. He definitely offers something different. He's like another one of these 21-year-old kids who seem to have come in and just hit the ground running, which, a lot of the squads like that. That's, valid point about O'Reilly as well. He's played a lot of football since we signed him, and obviously was asked to cover Cal for a good chunk of the season. So it's not maybe a massive surprise his form's dipped a little bit. But yeah, I thought that my only criticism of O was, and he was entitled to go down because they had Gogic had a massive handful of his shirt, but he did look keen to collapse a bit more easily than I would prefer. There was another one not long afterwards where he went down a bit too easily. But yeah, his contribution has been good. He won't be on penalties, I wouldn't have thought. He was a little bit lucky there. And yeah, as Mark said, the skip and run up was something to behold. But yeah, look, it went in, and by that point we're 4-1 up anyway. So look, I think I'd like to have us to have a fixed penalty taker. Obviously, Hatate's taken some.
It's Moy, isn't it? I think Moy.
Moy when he's on, Hatate if not. Obviously now always taking one. Obviously Giacomakis has missed a couple prior to him leaving. So and JJ was on them, but I guess when you rotate the central positions as regularly as we do, then there's a pretty good chance that if you have one fixed penalty taker, they're maybe not going to be on the pitch. So, and I know like Cal's missed a few down the years as well. So it wasn't the best of pens. It went in. It was icing on the cake. But yeah, look, I think there's so much more to come from him. Like he's literally probably just come off the back of a season, I think, in Korea. So, he's played a lot of football as well, you would imagine. But yeah, it's very early days in his career generally, and with us, I wouldn't start him ahead of Kyogo on Wednesday. We score 5 goals and Kyogo doesn't get one. It's probably a bit more of a talking point than we've mentioned. But again, I think he had 2 touches, but in amongst those 2 touches, then there was a red card, because you can't keep your eyes off him for a second and he'll be in behind. So I'd still start Kyogo, but I think it's been a very promising start for O. There's a long way to go with him in his career, but I think the signs are positive from what we've seen so far.
I mean, he's no Kyogo, and the comments are generally not particularly endorsing, not confidently endorsing anyway, but I think he's a lot better than a lot of the also ran strikers we've had in the past. Would you rather have a Miku in there or a Chris Killen or any of those players? I think there's something about them that we can would you rather have Albin Ayeti coming back in? I don't think so. So there's definitely something there, and I think there is a bit of work that he needs to do, but I think he's doing a good job in relief of Kyogo at the moment. But as you say, Kyogo is probably going to continue to start, and I think there's not going to be too many midweek games left after this one. Maybe one gets moved to the cup semi-final, but I think that's about it. Yeah, I think we can talk about what this means for the season overall. So we've already talked about what it meant in terms of the winning at St Mirren and what that means to us, what it means to Ange. But if we can look at Celtic's overall form and what it means, that's now 11 wins in a row. Okay. 14 out of 15 games won since the World Cup. We had 1 draw at Ibrox when we were ravaged by food poisoning. Okay, we're now 25 wins out of 27 in the league. That is pretty wild, to be honest. We're on 76 points and 87 goals. We're on track to beat the record for points. We're on track to beat the record for goals. And we're currently 9 points ahead and 28 goals ahead of our nearest rivals, if you want to call them that. Now, to give it a little bit more added context, on their current form, second place Sevco would be top of the table at this point last season after 27 games. So they've actually improved since last season, but it doesn't look like it because we're just absolutely rampant. We're now at the weekend, we hit 250 goals under Ange in just 99 games, which is great as well, especially with European games included in that. So how do you see this? And our overall form. How's the season shaping up now? There's a maximum of 15 games left. Tommy, what's your overall feeling on how this result has a bearing on the season and what our overall form is like?
Well, the overall form is absolutely incredible, really. It's ridiculous to have this many points and this many goals at this stage of the season. And I genuinely don't think I've enjoyed watching a Celtic team as much in my lifetime as I have watching this Celtic team. So I'm always, I think we touched on it last week, and I said I take it, one game at a time and always a bit more look at the bigger picture sort of thing. And I guess I've always been like that from being a suffering fan in the 90s and seeing us chuck away a 9-point league in 1987. And but with this team, even yesterday 1-0 down half-time, you just know that they're going to keep fighting, they're going to keep going. They do never stop. The amount of times that we've scored late goals to get a result. Even this season against Dundee United, they equalised in the 88th minute. We got the park and scored twice. St Johnstone, they equalised in the 91st minute. We got the park and scored a winner. So it's going to take a monumental collapse and a monumental change in what's happening for us to not go ahead and wrap it up. But we keep playing the way we're playing. We'll wrap it up in the next 8 games, I think, because we do look a bit unstoppable at the moment.
Yeah, and we've got, of the 11 games we've got left in the league, sorry, I said 15, there's 14 potential.
We need to win 8, I think, yeah.
But of the 11 league games, I think if we win our next 7, because one of them is against the second place team, so if we win our next 7, then we win the league.
I'd look that far out.
And of the 11 games we've got left, 6 of them are at home, and we've won every single home game this season. So, and if we need to win 8 and 6 of them are at home, then that's, what's your confidence levels? What's your belief levels, Paul, in that context?
Well, I was the only one bullish enough to say the league's pretty much done last week. So I'm not going to change my tune a week further down the line. Look, my point was, I get the...
Sorry, Paul, put a number on it. Give us a number, percentage.
That we win the league?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not putting a
percentage on it. Percentage to your confidence.
Oh, my confidence, I'm 100% confident. 100%. I'm 100% confident we'll win the league. But, when we do it is a case. But I take Tommy's point. My formative years were in the 90s as well. It was an absolutely horrific time to be a Celtic fan. So, we've seen some terrible times go by. But just with the amount you've rattled off a ton of stats there, Sean, but you look at how many games you got left, how many points we've dropped so far, how many points we've dropped in general after Ange initially got, the first few games were a bit wobbly, but after that, since he's been up and running, we barely dropped points in nearly 2 seasons. So I don't expect that we're going to drop, too many more points this season. And certainly with 2 games against the Rangers to come, one of them being at home, I expect if we beat them at home, that then the title is pretty much done and dusted, if not already, like, maybe not mathematically, but we beat them at home and results kind of go. Like, I think this Wednesday is going to be interesting. I expect us to beat Hearts. Obviously, we're at home, we've got the advantage, but they've got a tricky game against Hibs, and Hibs are obviously having a little bit of a renaissance finally, unbeaten in 5. So that gap could, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if the gap increases after the midweek games this week. At the very least, the goal difference will probably increase again.
Yeah, and I think sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point. It's something that we don't really think of. We look at it from our perspective, but that relies on them winning all their games, and there's absolutely no guarantees that they will, because most of the games have been scraping through by a goal here or there. So it's a good point.
The Hibs thing is curious because they've just lost Aidan McGeady for the season to a torn hamstring. But as you said, they have won 4 out of 5 games since El Sacico. So Lee Johnson was basically 1 game away from losing his job. He wins that game 6-0. Jim Goodwin gets canned. Then he comes back this weekend and gets Aberdeen's first away win in forever by managing Dundee United against them and losing at Tannadice. So it's a bit of a weird one, and we are playing Hibs at home soon. So Yeah, and the other incident that was remarkable from that game was David Martindale getting a red card for giving David Marshall the finger. So there's a lot of interesting things happening around Hibs at the moment, who we are facing, I think, after the international break. Did you see the incident in question, Tommy?
The Martindale one?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard about it. Isn't it something that Marshall was asking how long there is to go?
Yeah.
And then he sort of gave him the thing, and it was like 1 minute or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Did you see it, Paul?
No, I didn't see it, but Martindale behaved badly. You're not shocked, are you? Let's be honest.
Look, I'm just saying this. This is the sort of stuff I live for. When people talk like, "Oh, what's your English team?" Like, I don't need to support an English team. Like, I'm absolutely all in on the entertainment value of Scottish football. They go, "Oh yeah, but English football is better." I'm like, but Scottish football is more entertaining. How many EPL games would you see a manager sit red carded for giving a goalkeeper the finger? Like, Scottish football is pure entertainment. Like, it's bad, but it's better for me in terms of entertainment value. Tommy, do you disagree?
Oh, not at all. It's a lot more comical. There's no doubt about it. And I'm just wondering how that'll affect David Martindale's budget. He's sending off. He's always talking about the budgets. So
this is true. As long as they don't appeal, I think it doesn't cost them anything. Yeah. I think it's £1,000 to appeal, something like that.
No, that might hit hard.
Yeah, there's been, and look, I know we don't like to, there's aspects of it we don't think are great, but it's entertaining if nothing else. And look, in terms of which league is tin pot, any league where you get a big team beating another big team 7-0 is clearly tin pot, right?
Unbelievable.
Well, even Rangers managed to, I guess, a goal against them, didn't they?
Yeah.
So United, I've watched the highlights on that today, actually. The defending was absolutely shocking. And they pretty much tossed in the towel, so, like, in the last half an hour or so. It's got a couple of mates that United fans, and I've been trying to poke the bears a little bit this morning, but they're not really taking the bait yet. But they'll be fuming, absolutely fuming, especially because Liverpool have been on such a bit of a bad run.
Yeah. It's probably a long trip back to London for those travelling Man United fans as well, after a 7-0 win. Defeat, sorry. And Arsenal, are they going to win the league? Is that late minute? Is that the form of champions when you get late winners like that, Tommy?
Well, that was, I mean, if you talk about last minute winners, did they get much better than that? I mean, that was an absolute stormer of a goal. I mean, one touch and bang from outside the box across the goalkeeper. It doesn't get much better than that. That's about the second. I think that's the second time they've done it in 3 weeks or something. Didn't they do it against Aston Villa as well? So,
Villa, yeah.
Yeah, so they've got a touch. I mean, obviously, when you've got those sort of things doing, all the belief it gives you, because we know all about it. There's no reason why they can't. I mean, I've seen Arsenal a few times this year, and they play really good football. They're good to watch. So I wouldn't mind seeing them win the league. I don't really have an English team, but I like the football they play, so it'd be good to see them win it.
We've got a lot in common with Arsenal, obviously, with Kieran Tierney being there. Some of the Arsenal legends that came up here, like Ian Wright, Freddie Ljungberg, Jeremy Aliadier. Our team has been littered with ex-Arsenal legends. Or do we want to just spite Mike?
You forgot Martin Hayes. You forgot Martin Hayes.
And even now that you've said his name, I still can't remember him. So I'm going to continue to have forgotten Martin Hayes.
Yeah, as Tommy's face, he remembers him. So yeah.
Oh dear.
One of the worst signings we've ever made, I reckon. £1 million, I think.
That and Cascarino. Well. Yeah, $1 million and then 1.5 on Cascarino. Unbelievable.
But yeah, if only they could match Scottish football for entertainment value. Hopefully Mikel Arteta gets sent off for giving someone the finger before the end of the season, and then they can come and talk to us. Yeah. And again, the English fans were complaining that they didn't get to see the Arsenal game. I'm like, well, look, we don't get to see our midweek games this week because there's an English women's Premier League game, which is great for them. But, we're in Scotland. Shouldn't they be showing some of the big Scottish games that are happening this midweek? Celtic versus Hearts. I think we said Sevco against Hibs. Bit of a disappointing decision, but as it is, right? Should we be? I think that's more of a Tuesday, Wednesday topic about the broadcasting thing. So we'll probably just leave it there since we are hitting an hour. Tommy, any final thoughts? So obviously going to listen in to Celtic Down Under Tuesday, Wednesday shows this week. But anything else? Would you like to predict the Hearts game, since you probably won't be on before then?
Yeah, look, I would say probably the way we're going, probably 3-0. 3-0 at home, big crowd, Wednesday night under lights. Abada in for Maida would be the only change I would make, I think. One player we haven't touched on just quickly is Alistair Johnston, and how good is he going? Absolutely incredible. I think we might have want to watch there with a bit of an upgrade on Juranovic. But yeah, look, this week, more of the same. And if Hearts field a weakened team, could be a bit more, but I'll go for 3-0.
Yeah, hopefully they do what they did against Sevco and just chuck 3 strikers into midfield, which was top decision from Robbie Nielsen there. Paul, predictions? Anything else happening this week you'd like to mention?
So look, I just expect us to win, and probably win with a couple of goals to spare. I will give a little shout out to anyone that's listening in Scotland. If you are of a similar vintage to me, there's a one-man play which is on in both Glasgow and Edinburgh this week called Better Days. It's basically about the rise of the rave culture, and this one young kid's sort of change from football hooliganism and guitar bands to his life being kind of changed by dance music and dance culture. So yeah, a mate of mine wrote it. I've been lucky enough to hear the audio. It's been getting great reviews. It started last week in England. But yeah, Better Days in both Glasgow and Edinburgh this week if you're around.
Sounds good. I'll just be trying to figure out how I can get my nap schedule to work in a way that I can watch this game at 3:45 on Thursday morning. It seems unlikely, but I'll give it a crack.
That's me up for the day at that point. That's
that's it, because it finishes at 5:45. So
you might as well just stay up. Yep.
Yeah, you cannot get back to sleep. But yeah, I mean, try and nap before, like as in on the Wednesday. I need to try and work it out. I'll TBC. Right, I think that's us, boys. Well over an hour now. So all that's left to say is thanks for listening. Please tune into our shows tomorrow and Wednesday, and come back next week for the breakdown of our quarterfinal against Hearts, which is hopefully successful. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Cheers. Hail, hail.